Senza Overtime Reduction Project of the Blending Department by Bill Malzewski, Scott Cossack, Nathaniel Waldschmidt, Jared Dwyer for BML 322 Project Management.
At Essensia, our culinary approach to projects is important to us. We understand that a seasoning and functional ingredient company is also a food company at heart. We employ trained culinary professionals that have restaurant, product development, and manufacturing experience. Essensia encourages our partners to tap into our culinary experience to drive innovation with new concepts and flavor profiles.
As we look at the scope of our project, our team is focused on reducing the amount of overtime by approximately 50% in the blending department. The need for overtime in order to meet production goals is increasing due to high turnover rates. The main focal points for reducing the amount of overtime will consist of streamlining processes, reducing the employee turnover rate, developing an employee retention plan, and training employees to be more proficient in their respective areas. The overall project will be expected to complete with these items being implemented starting in March of 2017. Once these items are implemented, it will be the team's responsibility to closely follow these initiatives at minimum of 6 months from the last implementation. Within the project plan, we will look for current status of Essenzia's turnover rate and put a plan in place to increase benefits and help retain more employees. We will show that reducing turnover will create cost savings overall. Studies will be completed to manage process flow and implement new procedures to improve efficiencies. The team will look to review employee standards, accountability, and current disciplinary action procedures to help define company guidelines. Currently within the business, we are experiencing a high turnover rate that has increased from 34 terminations in 2015 to 42 terminations in a similar time frame of January to October. This is a 23% increase in an area of the business where we are looking to decrease and improve efficiencies and productivity. The largest percentage of terminations take place in the blending department, which in turn increases overtime because the other employees have to work additional hours to overcome the losses from termination. After researching the reasoning behind the terminations, it was determined that the top 3 reasons included performance, attendance, and those seeking new employment. Turnover can be very damaging to a company, so our intentions are to focus on increasing our employee retention moving forward. Before we take a look at Essenzia's benefits and retention, I wanted to share a stat with all of you first. Did you know that 70% of employees care most about paid time off and medical benefits? A strong benefits package can be the ultimate key to success with your employees within a business. People want to know that their well-being is in the best interest of the company. Currently at Essensia, the starting pay is very competitive at $13 an hour, with shift premiums for second and third shift. Vacation offerings at Essenza is very industry standard, with the possibility of earning 4 weeks in as little as 10 years with the company. They offer Christmas bonuses based on performance, and for production employees, that average is between $900 and $1,500 a year. Merit increases range between 0 and 3% based on employee performance, which is generally average compared to industry standard if you look at the data from Mercer.com on the right of the page. 401k match is also offered to employees at a match of 4%, so that if an employee puts 4% in, Essenza would match that contribution. However, an employee will not be fully vested until their 7th year, which can turn employees away from investing. Life insurance is also offered to employees at a rate of $1 per week, which is a very good offering the most. Now we will be looking at the possible ways of reducing the turnover rate and focus on retaining employees. There are many benefits to being a company that has a high employee retention rate. In my research, it was found that companies that have a positive morale in the workplace have up to a 50% absenteeism reduction. With a lower absenteeism rate, you increase your productivity and efficiencies because everyone is in their respective positions, giving you a good solid workflow. Another big benefit of retention is that it is very cost effective. To rehire and train a new employee can cost the company upwards of 50 to 60% of an employee's annual salary. Not only is employee retention a cost benefit, but it also helps in the recruitment of new employees, as 60% of individuals are less likely to come to a company if the turnover rate is high. If employee retention is low, people tend to think that there is something going on within the company, causing individuals to leave their employer. Another benefit from high employee retention is generally a positive working environment. By keeping employees longer, it increases their working relationships, which tend to create a family-like atmosphere. Let's take a look now at the current status of Asenza's efforts in retaining their employees. To help with the additional costs that we will accrue from these initiatives, we will look to reduce or eliminate costs in other areas that are not as crucial to the business. First thing we will look at is, instead of using 1 to 2 agencies for hiring, we will look to more, because agencies will compete for our business, causing a reduction in the costs when hiring. As we continue to seek temp to hire employees, there will be contracts set up for minimum 90 days employment before a review takes place. Best practice for hiring temp to hire is considered to be 6 months, as it gives the employee a chance to see the business and establish if he or she is comfortable in the position they work in, and if they feel they will be a good fit within. Next, we will look to increase training programs and implement structure and progression plans for the individual employees. This in turn will help lead to higher efficiency levels in productivity. Another item for cost savings will be to look at changing the entry-level starting pay to help offset costs. Look to create a wage increase plan as training and development of the employee takes place, getting them to the $13 an hour range if they complete everything successfully. This gives the employee a feeling that they are doing a good job and are being recognized by receiving increases while learning more and more of the business. Last cost-saving items will come from all the efforts above, along with the retention plan, because the costs will decrease as the turnovers decrease. Our team feels that these are the best ways to move forward as we look to decrease overtime, minimize turnover, increase employee retention, and increase productivity. As stated in the last slide, 70% of employees care most about medical insurance and paid time off. In our plan to reduce turnover, we will be looking at working on the benefit pool. Currently, Asenza is making minimal contributions towards insurance, and we believe that this is the first place to start improving. Our team will conduct research to find the best medical plans that are both affordable and still give you great coverage. The goal will be to provide a 50-50 split in costs amongst both parties, making the insurance more affordable for the individuals and their families. In efforts to reduce turnover, a plan will be implemented to reach out to employees on a regular basis, and also to create progression plans for individuals interested in pursuing a longer career at Asenza. As we all know, when we are told we are doing a great job, it increases the self-esteem, creating a sense of engagement and dedication to that of what you are doing. As we move forward with the focus in mind, it will be crucial to find ways to create cost savings to offset the additional expenses.
Next, we're going to talk about the blending efficiencies. If you take a look at the blending section of the process flow, you will see that there is one delay. This delay can cost about 44 minutes each time it occurs. The process is, the blender needs to tell the expediter that there is redump. Then the blender needs to wait for that redump to get sent back up to the MES so that they can add the redump into the work center. This can be a very time-consuming process. There was a time study done on the redump process, which is a process where a portion of the product is pulled from a work center and then reintroduced into the same work center to ensure proper mixing. This can cause a delay of 44 minutes. Each employee, blender, expediter, and mez operator, has a specific role in the redump process. The blender has to pull or fill a drum of 100 to 200 pounds into an empty drum. Then he has to communicate to the expediter that it's ready to be sent upstairs. The expediter has to stop what he or she is doing to then put that pallet on an elevator. That elevator gets sent up to the mezzanine, where the mezzanine operator will pull that pallet off of the elevator, stage it in front of the work center. At that time, the blender then will go ahead and dump it into the work center. But as you can see, during the time study, it was broken down into a couple of tasks. For the blender, we have after mix time to pull of redump. That took about 13 minutes. From pull of redump to the communication to the expediter, that took about 12 minutes. What that tells us is that by the time that the expediter is available to grab that pallet, 12 minutes has expired. This could be because the expediter is doing other tasks within the warehouse, putting away other pallets, helping somebody else with their redump. And then from there, we have from stage in front of the work center to dump into the work center, which takes typically about a minute. It's really a nominal amount of time. The issue is getting it to that blender up on the mez to dump it. When we break down the expediter tasks, we look at it from when the expediter learned about the redump to when that expediter was actually able to pick up that redump, how long it took them to get to the elevator, and then from there, how long did it take to get on the elevator. That was a total of 14 minutes on average. For the mez-op, same thing. From the elevator to the work center, it wasn't really that much of a time. It was very nominal. He pretty much was able to pull it from the elevator and put it right in front of the tank. The average time was about 2 minutes. But when you add all of these little steps and processes together, we realize that we are spending 44 minutes on this process. So the first thing we want to do is decide, what do we want to do with this? Do we want to try to reduce the time? Do we want to go ahead and try to eliminate the task? Or do we want to displace the task? Well, we really can't reduce the task because we just don't have the capital this year to introduce a recycling system, which would expedite the process by allowing us to pretty much use a vacuum to suck it up from the bottom and go directly into the tank. The engineer will not allow that. It's going to be expensive, and they don't really want to modify a tank like that. The other thing is, can we displace this? We really can't give it to anybody else because the blender is responsible for the blend, and they need to be able to pull this blend out. So you really can't find any other step in the process to give it to somebody else that might have more time, which would allow the blender to have more time to produce blends as opposed to waiting on rework. So then the next thing that we have is eliminate the process. Yes, that's right. My suggestion is that we eliminate the redump process. The reason why this is, the redump process was created really solely as a knee-jerk corrective action that happened one time from a customer complaint from 2010. That's right. The purpose of the redump was to ensure that the product is mixed thoroughly. Due to one quality incident from 2010, there was only one record of a QI, and the redump procedure was put in place as a corrective action. Prior to this QI, there was never an issue with the mixture of the product. This corrective action plan has cost the company 44 minutes per work order, and the following will show how much time is actually wasted for a corrective action from a QI that only happened once. Now again, I would understand that if this was a reoccurring issue, if we constantly had issues with the redump process, then what we have to do is say, okay, this is what it is. We have to accept this 44 minutes with the redump process, and what else can we do to make up that time somewhere else? But the thing is this happened one time. And honestly, when it happened, it was rework, and we were able to rework the product, which we introduced it back into the tank, and we had to do about 15 minutes. So if we want to say all in with quality insurance getting involved, for managers getting involved to make a decision, let's just say we spent 2 hours of various labor, right, for that one time. So even if this were to occur again, it would still be a lot cheaper than the 44 minutes per work order that we spent. So let's break this down. Average work order processed within the blending department per day is 14. This would be an added time of 616 minutes or 10.26 hours per day that's really just allocated because of the redump, which takes about an average of 44 minutes. The average work order time is 90 minutes or 1.5 hours. So the redump is pretty much half of the time that we spend on this work order. If we can decrease 44 minutes from each work order, which would equate to decreasing the time by 49%, production would be able to add 6.86 work orders per day. That's huge. It's 49% increase in production if we eliminate this step. So we can go from 14 blends a day to a total of 20.86 blends a day, which is a fairly large increase. And then what we say is, okay, well, what are the risks involved? Well, if there was a risk involved, then again, as I stated before, the error that happens, it's an easy fix that takes under 2 hours to reintroduce into the tank and mix for an additional 10 to 15 minutes, which again would be made up when it does happen. We don't have any indication that this is actually a trend, that we have any QIs from any other rework issues prior to the rework process being implemented. So even if it did happen once or twice, it still wouldn't warrant us to put a 44-minute penalty per work order. Thank you.
Next, we're going to talk about employee standards, accountability, and disciplinary actions at Essentia. First off, set expectations and ensure employees are following procedures. Employees must understand the proper methods to perform their specific job-oriented tasks at the facility. By doing so, the company must educate and train employees by qualified personnel. It says he must teach employees safety, best practices, and efficiency measures in their specific jobs or tasks. Essentia must test employees regularly to ensure that they are capable of performing their specific jobs and tasks correctly. Update procedures as needed to consistently meet high performances, as required by Essentia, regularly auditing the process of each employee to ensure continued efficiency and, more importantly, comprehension by all employees. Regularly inspect the product that Essentia produces at all stages for quality. Ensure critical steps are being performed correctly. And then following up with that, rating daily performance through shift-by-shift reporting, ensuring employees under all supervisors are meeting the same standards, and then reviewing documented errors that may occur to find any potential commonalities in procedural behaviors. And then backing that up, we would follow and review current discipline policies for suitable enforcement of written policies. So consistently document and enforce any of the written discipline policies, and above that, holding all employees to the same standards of the written policies, and enforce those written policies and expectations of the company. Of any of those that may not be working, or adjustments that may be needed as time goes on, we propose updated discipline policy to ensure accountability. So coaching employees on best practices, whether that be internal or even bringing in third party. Recognize employees who are consistently meeting standards and rewarding them accordingly. Enforce those policies with a sliding scale of disciplinary actions and consistent with number and or severity of the errors, and hold peers accountable for reporting to increase accountability among all employees and not just supervisors. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, holding supervisors and crew leaders accountable for holding their employees accountable. Determine a process to hold superiors and crew leaders accountable for holding their own employees accountable by making superiors part of the strategic planning process. Um, we could do so by creating measurable objectives for the team and offer incentive compensation for fulfillment of objectives. Supervisors who meet with employees regularly to update on progress goals and how the employee is contributing to the end goal, and incentivize all employees for completing their respective goals.
So one of the major issues that we wanted to address in the project was the training and development. It was pretty clear that there wasn't a set training program. The company was experiencing consistent turnover, and it was proving to be a financial detriment to the company. So one of our objectives for this project was to, first of all, create a set schedule for incoming Ascensia employees. This would reduce the inexperience and employee turnover. So we really wanted to focus on the training aspect of this company because poor training leads to turnover. Um, a recent survey that we came across indicated that 40% of employees who receive poor job training end up leaving their positions within the first year. That is a substantial number that could be prevented or could be lowered by just proper training. A number of reasons for that. Improper training leads to a lack of confidence on the job. It leads to poor performance. So these factors affect the cost of turnover for a company like Ascensia. And when you look at some of the studies across the board, for depending on the position, a typical the cost of replacing a frontline employee can cost about $5,500 on average, which again, if you think about 25 employees over the course of a year potentially turning over, that is a substantial amount. That's over $100,000 that is costing the company just because there is a significant amount of turnover, and the company is losing out on those hours and forced to retrain and retrain. Not just about the eliminating the turnover, that training really does help and affect a company like Ascensia. The proper training, efficient training, gives your employees a boost to job satisfaction. It makes your company more appealing and attractive to potential new employees or potential new clients. As a company, yes, you are more likely to keep good employees if you can offer development opportunities to them, but you are also more likely to attract good employees as well. Overall, training helps your business run much more efficiently. The last piece that we wanted to focus on in regards to the training and development portion of this project is creating a new program. So the scope of this new training program that we would lay out for Ascensia pertains to all individuals working in the blending department. This ensures accuracy and consistency throughout the process for all the shifts. So this is really it. It's pretty basic. It's just a checklist that we created. 4 weeks, about a month-long process that each new employee will go through to understand the entire blending department and processes. It's a checklist for both the supervisor and the employee to map out, to complete. These are milestones for the employee to attain proper training in every aspect of the position. This eliminates any chance that a supervisor or trainer may leave anything out, may improperly train. They're not just flying by the seat of their pants anymore. They have a checklist here of everything that needs to be completed and implemented for a proper training of a new Ascensia employee.
The risk plan. Risks will be documented and prioritized. Ownership of risk will be established to ensure that resolution is reached. Risks will be communicated among the project team. Risks will be analyzed by the following methods. Data control and assessment. Each threat and opportunity will be further looked at for quality of data availability and risk rating in part. Assumption testing. Project assumptions will be revisited to ensure that identification risks are still valid. Definition of probability and impact. We're going to take a look at each scale or each risk and determine its probability of occurrence and the effect of that occurrence. So if a risk is high risk, even if it were only to happen one time or 1% of the time, if it's still severe, then we're going to prioritize that risk as very severe. We're going to want to tackle that risk first, come to a resolution immediately. If the probability shows that even if it were to happen 1 to 20% of the time, but it's really a minimal impact to the project, then we will prioritize as well. Members of the project team are Scott Kozak, Bill Mozuski, Nathaniel Waldschmidt, and Jared Dreyer. The communication plan is set forth to identify exactly who we're going to communicate, when we're going to communicate, and which information we're going to communicate to them. Prime example, Patty Godel, the company owner. We're going to inform her of the progress report through all phases. We're going to have a meeting, and we're going to do this monthly. This is to ensure that everybody is abreast to any changes, current statuses of the project at all times. The implementation plan will be provide the HR department with the created employee retention plan, update employee handbook and provide hard copies to all current employees, update the blending department procedure to reflect the elimination of redumps, hold 3 department trainings, 1 per shift to retrain on the blending procedure, provide the HR department with the newly created training program and forms, hold a training meeting with the crew leaders and supervisors on the training program and how to capture employee progress. Provide the HR department with the newly created disciplinary policy and forms, update the employee handbook and provide hard copies to all employees. Hold a training meeting with the supervisors on the newly created disciplinary policy. Hold an informative meeting that goes in depth with the changes that were provided within the employee handbook. This way we want to ensure that the supervisors and the employees have an in-depth understanding of what changes actually occurred and how it's going to affect them in the future. The closing plan. Project leaders to evaluate given project assignments daily, weekly. Weekly team evaluations will be held. After project completion, a minimum 6-month follow-through. Bi-weekly team meetings, one-on-ones with area leads or supervisors, review accountability records and occurrences, final implementation costs, savings analysis, future outlook, turnover rate, increase or decrease since implementation. At 6 months from last initiative go live, review with entire project team to decide whether to continue monitoring or if all implemented improvements and plans are working properly. If the team's decision is to continue monitoring, then a new evaluation plan will be put in place at that time.